Welcome to the 5-Minute History Podcast, where every week we tell you interesting things from history in about 5 minutes. And now, here is your host, Wayne Armstrong.
Hi guys, welcome to the 5-Minute History Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9, The History of Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari was the youngest child of Alfredo Ferrari, who was a metal fabricator. He was born in Modena, near Bologna, Italy, in February 1898. Although growing up with little in the way of formal education, by the age of 10 he knew he wanted to be a race car driver after he witnessed Felice Nazzaro win the 1908 Circuito di Bologna. In 1916, an outbreak of the flu claimed the lives of Enzo's father and his older brother, who was also called Alfredo. And when the flu returned during the European flu pandemic of 1918, Enzo himself became very ill, resulting in him being discharged from the Italian army, in which he had been serving since the beginning of the First World War. Being no longer paid a salary by the army, Enzo looked around for a job, and after being unsuccessful at trying to get a job at Fiat, he managed to find probably the perfect job when he became a test driver for a car manufacturer in Milan called CMN. It turned out that he was quite good at his job and became the company's racing driver in 1919, debuting in a hill climb where he finished in 4th position. The following year, Enzo joined Alfa Romeo, and in 1924 he won the Coppa Acerbo in Pescara. However, he would soon retire as a driver after the death of Antonio Ascari in 1925, which affected him deeply. In 1929, Enzo started his own company called the Scuderia Ferrari, which had its headquarters in his birth town of Modena. The idea was to take cars such as Alfa Romeos and rebuild, prepare and supply them to owner drivers. Around the same time he started to use the prancing horse emblem on the cars, which was his way of paying respect to a fighter pilot from the war called Francesco Baracca, who, after gifting Enzo a necklace with the emblem on it, was shot down and killed. The new company, under the guidance of Enzo Ferrari, essentially became the technical arm of Alfa Romeo, eventually taking over as the Alfa Romeo racing team until 1933, when Alfa stopped racing. In 1935, Scuderia Ferrari had its first car, the Alfa Romeo Biмотori, and in 1937 the first few Alfetta 158s were assembled in Modena by Ferrari. 4 years after it had stopped racing, though, Alfa Romeo brought its racing operations in-house and started racing again under the Alfa Corsa name, based in Milan. Enzo Ferrari was brought in to manage the team, and so Scuderia Ferrari closed. Ferrari missed running his own car company, though, and in 1939 he left Alfa Romeo. Part of the deal was that he wouldn't use the Ferrari name on race cars for 4 years, and so Enzo created Auto Avio Costruzioni, which was based in the old Ferrari buildings in Modena. The company made machine tools and aircraft parts, but in 1940 it also built 2 examples of a race car called the 815, which was based on a Fiat 508C. It debuted at the Mille Miglia, but due to the outbreak of the Second World War there was no more competition within which it could compete. In 1943 Enzo moved the factory to Maranello, where it has been located ever since. Rebuilt following bombing by the Allies in 1944 and 1945, the factory turned its sights towards car manufacturing, with Enzo commissioning a design for a V12 engine from Gioacchino Colombo. In 1946, the first completely new car to carry the Ferrari badge rolled out of the Maranello factory. Called the 125 Sport, it was powered by Colombo's 1.5-litre V12, and on March the 12th of that year, Enzo Ferrari himself took it out for a test drive. 2 months later, 2 examples of the 125 Sport raced at Piacenza. Ferrari entered its first Grand Prix in 1950 when it was held for the first time in Monaco. A year later, Ferrari won its first Grand Prix race, and in 1952, Alberto Ascari presented Ferrari with its first world title, followed by a second a year later. In 1957, the company officially changed its name to Autocostruzioni Ferrari. In 1961, tensions which had been brewing at the Ferrari company came to a head when several critical members of the team demanded that Enzo Ferrari's wife, Laura, be prevented from meddling in the company's affairs. Enzo refused, and so the company was pitched into turmoil, and all those who were involved in the revolt were ousted. This was a critical time for Ferrari, as it was developing the 250 GTO, which had been designed to take on the Jaguar E-Type. Into the void stepped a young engineer called Mauro Forgieri and coach builder Sergio Scaglietti. Phil Hill subsequently raced the 250 GTO at Sebring, where it was placed first in its class, easily beating the cars fielded by Jaguar. This success found its way into cars that Ferrari was developing for the road, including the 275 and the legendary 365 GTB4 Daytona. Ferrari's mid-engined race cars were also doing well. These carried the Dino badge after Ferrari's son, who had died of muscular dystrophy in 1956 at the age of only 24, and led to strong-selling road-going versions such as the 246 GT Dino. In the mid-1960s, the American motor giant Ford challenged the success of Ferrari on the racetrack with the help of Carroll Shelby, who took a small open-seat sports car called the Cobra from a small British company called AC and married it to a 4.7-litre V8 Ford engine. The recipe, although good, wasn't quite good enough, so Ford tried to buy Ferrari, but a deal could not be reached. Consequently, Ford decided to develop its own car. In 1966, the American giant entered the 24-hour of Le Mans with the Ford GT40. They not only won the race, but also took second and third spots as well, ending Ferrari's dominance. Following the success of Ford with its big V8 power, the FIA decided to limit prototype races to an engine size of 3000 cc. This not only effectively banned the Ford GT40, but it also impacted on Ferrari's response, which was the 330 P4. Ferrari refused to enter any sports car races in 1968 by way of protest. The following year, Ferrari entered a few races with its new 312P, and later with the 512S, but only finished fourth in a season that was dominated by newcomer Porsche. It fared no better in 1970 and decided to concentrate on the development of the new 312PB, which would be ready for the 1972 season. In 1969, the Italian car giant Fiat acquired a 50% stake in Ferrari, which immediately resulted in an injection of capital. Investment in new Dino and Ferrari models was made, although the racing team hardly benefited at all. As planned, the 312PB had a very successful season in 1972, although Porsche did not compete due to further rule changes imposed by the FIA. Reliability marred the cars in the 24-hour races though, and so Ferrari did not compete at Le Mans. It did enter Le Mans in 1973, finishing an unexpected second, but at the end of the season Ferrari decided to withdraw from sports car racing in order to concentrate on Formula One. Up to this point, Ferrari had fared well in Formula One, having clinched 6 world championships in 1952, 1953, 56, 58, 61 and 64, with such legendary drivers as Alberto Ascari, Juan Manuel Fangio, Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees. Formula One championship wins eventually returned to the team in the 1970s thanks to Niki Lauda in 1975 and 77, even though he had been severely burned and almost lost his life in a crash during the 1976 German Grand Prix. In 1979, Ferrari won its 3rd World Championship of the decade, courtesy of Jody Scheckter. During the 1980s, though, the Ferrari Formula One team had to endure a period of crisis during which Gilles Villeneuve lost his life at the 1982 Belgium Grand Prix. In the same year, Didier Pironi was very nearly killed at the German Grand Prix, and Ferrari wouldn't win another World Championship for 21 years. In 1988, Enzo Ferrari died at the age of 90. The last Ferrari model that he oversaw the construction of was the legendary Ferrari F40. At the same time, Fiat increased its stake in the company to 90% and appointed sporting director Luca de Montezemolo as its president in 1991. 2 years later, Ferrari hired Frenchman Jean Todt as sporting director. He, along with new driver Michael Schumacher, who already had 2 world championships under his belt whilst driving for Benetton, steadily built the Ferrari Formula One team back to winning ways. Coming close to winning in 1997, 98 and 99, Schumacher went on to win Ferrari's first world championship for 21 years in 2000. He also won it for the team for the following 4 seasons. Following a series of deals made from 2002 to 2010, Ferrari ownership passed from Fiat to a banking consortium and back again. When Fiat subsequently became Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, it announced that it was separating the Ferrari business, of which it owned 90%. This 90% is now owned by public shareholders following the company's IPO in 2016. The other 10% is owned by Enzo Ferrari's second and only surviving son, Piero. I hope you enjoyed that episode of 5 Minute History. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, and if you get the chance, please leave me a comment wherever you get your podcasts. A transcript of the show can be found on the website at 5minutehistory.com, along with links to our social media accounts. And if you'd like to see some pictures to go with the words, please check out the YouTube channel at 5minutehistory.com/YouTube. Finally, why not check out my other podcast, 5 Minute Biographies, which you can find at 5minutebiographies.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the 5 Minute History podcast at www.5minutehistory.com.